and we're live. It's the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum Show with the Scrum Master Toolbox online with us. We are here, and we are trying to get on here. Always technical stuff. I know. We're going live. We're doing Zoom. Yeah, so we're live. We're definitely out there in the world, and there's always one way to find out. Here we're with Bubbles. Hi. Hey, good morning. 5 a.m. 5 a.m. Mester Scrum with the Bubbles program. Hi, everyone out there in the world. This is Bubbles. I just woke her up. She stole my phone. You stole my phone, baby girl. All right, so we're out there in the world. It's a live show with the Scrum Master Toolbox. Vasco, he's online, and we're doing this live. You'll always hear his podcast, but now you're going to actually see him live and in person. So there we go. So we're doing something special today. We're working together on the Agile Online Summit, so we decided we would do a dual podcast. Hey, we already got a Karen. Hey, good morning. How are you? She's already on. She's saying hi. So there you go, Karen. Let me know if you hear everything okay, Karen, out there. Put a little note or something like that. She's on LinkedIn. So we can't really comment on LinkedIn, but we know LinkedIn's live because she's saying hi. So we're good. And yeah. So let's go. How do you want to go about talk? We can talk about a topic I have. We're gonna do a little Flip Cookie Friday stuff going on here today too. So we're gonna do that. Yep. And we're gonna use Bubbles for likes. So please like the video when you see Bubbles and support her continued attendance in this videos. Except I think she just comes here because it's quiet.
Let's not forget that. So people do stick around because there's a fortune cookie reading and analysis coming from Greg, who's the host of the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum podcast. That's the fortune cookie thing was one of the things that I really liked about your format.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool. So when did you start your show? Or how did you start your show?
So this was 2017. Yeah. And I had been publishing blogs, so writing and publishing blog posts since about 2006, if I remember correctly. And I felt that the format is very it's a good format, but it's very it doesn't lend itself to sharing real life stories. A blog post is very edited. It's either very short or then there's a lot of stuff in it, and it takes a lot of time. It takes 2-3 hours to do a decent blog post, and it's very edited. It's not like the real thing. And when you interview people, you get the real thing. Like when we are now talking, right? You get the real thing. You get the real people. So I decided I needed to start interviewing people so that they would share their first-person real life stories, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast is all about, is about getting people to come on the show and share their real life stories as Scrum Masters, as Agile coaches, as team members. We have a product owner coming up soon doing a whole week of episodes on the product owner perspective of the Scrum Master role.
There you go.
So it's real people, and it's every day, and that's also one of the things I really wanted to do, something every day. And obviously with a blog, it's very hard to come up with something every day. So the podcast was just the right way to do it, and we've been doing that for 5 years now.
Well, that's great. I was just behind you. I guess I started just before COVID. I think the year before COVID in 2019.
And how did you get started?
So I got started because, to be honest with you, I was bored to death. So, sometimes as an Agile coach in the corporate environment, there is, from an Agile perspective, they only want to do so much Agile, right? So one of the big things that I got into was, okay, well, I want to also express and learn and get the stickiness from the Agile thought process by going on every day and just talking about Agile, because I knew there were so many people that wanted to know Agile. It just certain groups, they could care, or only want to do as much to get by. And I was coaching a lot of teams, and I thought it would be nice to do a quick little under 15 minute show, and started at 5 a.m. in the morning because that was the only time it was quiet in the house. And that was before I had my office. I was sitting in the kitchen, did the 5 a.m. in the morning, half times, half awake. You could definitely see in the early episodes when I wasn't awake yet. So part of it was just getting into going out and doing stuff. And it was just a way to share ideas and thought process to a larger audience. And part of me, I'm a big believer in just trying something to see how it works. Because even as when I coached or when I was Scrum Master for teams, doing development, sometimes I'm like, well, how does this social media stuff work? And part of it was just curiosity for myself. How do you do a YouTube channel? I don't know, And I figured, I'd just give it a shot, try it out. And then I was putting up little video clips up, and my son, we were doing Coke and Mentos experiment, because that was a big thing during COVID, right?
I remember those.
It was Coke and Mentos, and we went out and we did I was doing TikTok too. I was just playing around and put a little video for Coke and Mentos. And it did nothing on TikTok, right? It just did not work. It didn't really blossom. But for some reason on YouTube, it went viral. And the next thing I know, my son has 13 million views. So,
wow.
So it was like, okay, how do we
amazing.
recreate this? Whatever. But I was funny. Now he's YouTube famous. He's a YouTuber. He wants to be a YouTuber. But he's now 9, so it's been a few years.
So still some ways to go.
Yes, he's still some ways to go. But it was funny how that clicked in and it went through the algorithm, and then I was watching how the algorithm worked and how it picked up and relayed stuff. But it was just an interesting experiment. That's how it started. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you started doing that experiment, I've noticed that your format is you have like Tuesday news and stuff like that, but your format is very much like this, putting yourself and your thoughts out there, right? Like just taking a topic and dissecting it and, sharing your perspectives on it. And there's a lot of also anecdotes that you share, plus the fortune cookie. Let's not forget the fortune cookie, which is coming up. So stay listening.
Yeah,
there will be a fortune cookie. So how did you come up with the format? Did it evolve organically? How did you get there?
Well, yeah, the format evolved organically where it was really just, the idea was to be within a daily scrum, 15 minutes, doing a live thing, everything would be on it. Because I wanted people to see that you can explain something and do something, a lot of stuff in 15 minutes. And even now, 15 minutes is kind of long. So that's one thing. How can you do a daily scrum in 15 minutes? I would go to so many big sessions that people never did Agile. And they go, well, we have hour-long daily scrums. We have half-hour-long daily scrums. I'm like, you don't need that much time just to exchange and figure out what you want to do for the day. So that's kind of how the format evolved. And then the news thing is like, I wanted to do something different than the typical, here's Scrum, sprint plan, here's how you do these things and do the typical class thing. Let's teach Scrum. Because I learned as an Agile coach, you can only teach Scrum or Agile or Kanban so much. They get it all. What's the next step? And I wanted to share stuff that were little tactical and practical things you could do as a Scrum Master or an Agile coach, product owner, or someone on the team to get it to the next level. Things they don't teach you in the class. Things you don't get in a 2-day class, right? I know you love certification, right? So
I'm doing air quotes here, everybody.
Yeah. So I was doing it too. But stuff you don't get in those classes, right? The continued pieces of material and stuff like that. And then it just developed into the job, because everybody wants to know about jobs. And I'm like, I was watching this and finding, hey, I could do that. I could talk about the market and what's going on and what's in Agile. I am going to evolve it to another thing where I am going to do interviews, much like you, with Scrum Masters, product owners that are connected to the show, my connections. I got like almost 13,000 connections in LinkedIn right now. So I'm figuring, hey, I got enough material to last me forever. Right?
Pretty much.
I can just go out there and ask, hey, you want to be on the show? Sure, let's be on the show. So it'll evolve with that, and then later on we're going to do a meetup.
But it's going to be tough to get all of those guests to be up at 5 a.m. your time.
Well, we're going to record those.
Ah.
So
right.
I think we're going to record it. They're going to be in the evening. Probably evening East Coast time, and then record it. And that's the beauty of YouTube, by the way. It's like a big library. I think of it as my library. Anybody can go on YouTube. Everybody's like, oh, I missed your show. That's okay. It's on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube. You can surf to your heart's content.
Yeah, just search for 5 a.m. Mester Scrum, and there you go.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I got as of today is our 875th episode, right? With you on it. So how many episodes?
Oh, my God.
875. So, yeah, it's consistency, right?
And not just consistency, but yeah, I think prolific consistency, right? Because you could be consistent at once a month.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you could.
But you do it every day. So we are. I believe I just recorded week 411. Every week has 5 episodes, so you can multiply that and figure that out. And then on top of that, we record something like maybe 20, 25 bonus episodes every year. So that's 5 years at 20, let's say 20 episodes, 5 times 20. And then the 1,400 plus episodes that we have on a daily cadence. And yeah, I looked at the podcast format exactly like you described YouTube. I wanted the podcast to be a library that, any Scrum Master out there in the world, if they have a question, they go and ask for they go to the Scrum Master Toolbox .org podcast website, and they just search for it there. Because if they do, they'll definitely find a real life story that has not only the answer, but also the context, the struggle, the learning journey that people share on the show. And for me, that was the key. It's like, it's not just about certification, which I don't like at all. I think certification is pretty much the same as knowing how to do additions and subtractions and multiplications. It won't get you hired, but if you don't have it, that's fine. You're out of the job.
Right.
So I think certification is a little bit like the ticket you pay to get into the game, but then you need to do a lot more. And what you do is you gain experience. You collect all of these stories that hopefully you come then on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast and share with the rest of the community. So that's what the podcast is all about.
Yeah, and that is great, because that is so true. You're getting more information just besides the little 2-day class if you take it. And now they got it, not to critique one of the programs, where you just take an exam. I'm like, and it's funny, the one of the places I work with, sometimes they like, oh, we got that exam version of a certificate, and I go, but at least in the class you get to interact a little bit with some other people. I said, anybody can study and pass an exam if you study well enough. You're a good study person, you can do it. But how do you get that extra experience, right? And that's also
absolutely, and it's only real life that is going to give you that. Of course, that or a podcast where you have real life being communicated every day.
Yeah, definitely, and that's kind of what I try to do on my show too, where just come up with stuff that relates to real life. I try to coach people, and I also do coaching, to think of the Agile mindset everywhere. What you see. Lately, I've been watching a lot of self-help books or stuff like that, and motivational stuff. How does that apply to an Agile group? How can you apply that? Just to give a different perspective on how more things can be more Agile and how they deliver. And if you're listening to any of these millionaires, I started doing, how do you build a $1 million team? And it's all these millionaires talk about their subjects, and I go, this is Agile. And I would talk about it, right, in my presentation. And just little things like that, how Agile that thought process is.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to being Agile, like we talked about how you produce content on a regular basis, we talk about the importance of sharing real life experiences, and something that maybe your listeners don't know yet is that you're actually collecting a bunch of stories about happiness at work for the Agile Online Summit. So Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Greg? Like, what have you found? What are the stories that are coming up that people can expect to hear at the Agile Online Summit?
So the stories are a mix of everything from the classic, how do you do a retro, right? And make it more enjoyable, but also mindset questions, doing different things and how you operate in an agile environment. They're bringing up some mental things and practices that you can do. And it's going to be a mix of different things that make work more enjoyable, right? And that's the idea. So it's not just like, let me put on a funny hat and show a cat, right? That's not the only thing about it.
Although that helps.
Yeah. But it's also about enjoying what you do, right? Enjoying coding, enjoying working as a team, enjoying producing a product. And that's part of the happiness. So there's a little mix of that in some of the different interviews.
This is actually a very good point, because Jeff Sutherland's one of the founders of the whole Scrum, or the formalization of Scrum, rather, because Scrum is a collection of patterns that was done by many people, but he, Mike Biddle, Ken Schwaber kind of formalized it through their own work. And one of the things that he talks about is that Scrum is there to make a process efficient, and the concern of Scrum is the efficiency of how work gets done, and which, of course, it's incredibly important. Like, I'm not disputing that part, but I think that there's also another aspect which was present in the original kind of mantra of the Scrum Alliance, which was changing the world of work. And that other aspect is to transform the dynamics at work so that we don't create work environments that are frankly awful for people's own self-confidence, self-esteem, and even mental and physical health. I mean, you and I are old enough to have worked in quite a few death march projects, which, by the way, are the trademark of waterfall. It's very common a waterfall project ends in a death march, where you have to cancel weekends and vacations. And
well, you
so
really
on.
say that. And I talk about I worked in DOD for a while. And before I worked with this one company, they actually had 2 people die. They stressed themselves out.
Well,
it was during Desert Storm, and they were working overtime and hours, and they actually legitimately had a couple of people die of a heart attack because they were just in there constantly. And people say that, and I said it can't happen. You can stress yourself out.
And I know people who were lost for work because they had a mental breakdown, burnout together with depression and other psychological complications triggered by the burnout. And because of that, were not able to work again. Like they didn't die, but they were.
And as far as that industry is concerned, they were done. And that's part of our mission statement, to get you home to family and friends, right? Have a little fun. So it's not just about being in the office 24/7. Like some big corporate companies would once you stay there all day long. But it's also about getting it done effectively and getting out to your family.
And because of that, I think that the happiness track at the Agile Online Summit is such a great contribution, because we need to find ways to make work not just effective or efficient even, but it's also about making work a productive part of our lives, not just the corporate lives, but our personal, individual lives. And of course, going to a work environment where you feel enjoyment and fulfillment is part of it. It's not the only part of it, of course. There's also camaraderie and sense of belonging and all kinds of other things that we could focus on. But that's definitely part of it. That's why I'm so happy that you are hosting that track at the Agile Online Summit, the happiness track.
Yeah, and I try to get some good people. Trying to get more people that would put themselves as the happiness director. Got a couple of people that show up, but it'll be nice to have that more. That when they do that. I just want to say one thing about Scrum, and you talk about doing things faster. I also think of Scrum as a big reflection or retrospective on yourself. Scrum also designs a thing where you have to get out there and see how you're doing and present your work. And these are all the barriers so many people are terrified of doing. But Scrum forces you to do it, and which is, I think, it's fun. Forces you to plan your week. forces you to talk to other people on the team, and you can't just hide in a corner, and forces you to ask for help because you want to get something done. Otherwise, I've had teams that when I worked waterfall would just take forever because it wasn't that checking and that plan, do, check, act, right? And getting people out there. So one of the things
the plan, do, check, act, by the way, something we don't talk nearly as much as we should in the Agile community.
Yeah.
Plan, do, check, act is just a way to look at how work gets done.
Yeah.
It's a very simple model, which is, one could call it inspect and adapt as well. It's pretty similar to that, although there's 4 steps, but it's pretty much the same way. And it also relates to this idea that wherever we start, whether we start in a wonderful place or where we start in a crappy place, wherever we start, we can make it better. If it's really good, we can make it even better. If it's really crap, we can make it first acceptable, then enjoyable, and then maybe even good, right? So that's the whole idea, and that mentality I didn't get from Agile, but I saw it again in the Agile community. I got it from the work by Edward Deming. Yeah. Edward Stemming, who used to write a lot, and he was a curmudgeon, so he used to just completely do flame wars on management in the States because he was in the States, and he would just, say bad things about management in the States, but also offering solutions, and that's the important part here. And I think that Scrum is an approach to bringing that solution to the fore, right? Yep. Scrum is a solution to a set of problems, right? Yeah. And one of them being the Death March projects that we were just talking about a minute ago. Yep. It's also potentially a solution for making the workplace more enjoyable, because if you look at that as part of what you're delivering as a team, right, a sustainable and enjoyable environment where you can indefinitely continue to develop your product, then it can become a really positive influence in people's lives.
Yeah. As long as you don't allow the term velocity and estimation to take over your process. Like I did a show the other day, talked about giving yourself time to think, whether it be random thoughts or focused thoughts. Like if you have a problem, you want to work together, but don't do 100% capacity in your sprint planning. Give yourself 40% of your time to do thought experiments, to grow as a group, try something new, take on something different that may not be part of the business thing, And that's where maybe we agree on that one. Where they take that way too far, and we need to plan exactly our full capacity from a velocity point perspective, and it's got to be totally that. I'm no, don't do that.
I've heard that before. So, Greg, we're getting close to the end of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast episode. Let's see how the live stream goes, but at least the episode's coming to an end. Before we do open the fortune cookie, and we are going to open the fortune cookie in a minute, folks, but before that, do tell our audience, where can they find you?
You can find me at 5 a.m. Mester Scrum. If you search anywhere, podcasts, social media, Google it, you'll find me. We're on all the podcast centers. And I do follow you, by the way. I follow your group. And I listen to your stuff every day because it's good stuff. And YouTube, LinkedIn, you can look for Greg Mester. You'll find the one Agile cheerleader. I quote myself as the Agile cheerleader. Some people are like, oh, cheerleaders. But you know what? You got to have some happiness into it. Can't be just like, I need more velocity. I need to make it perfect. It's got to be this, and it's got to be this sprint. And this is how you do it. And the book says this. It's a little more than that.
And you definitely get that kind of happy atmosphere by listening to the 5am Master Scrum podcast. Especially because there's Bubbles. And finally,
Bubbles is
your
sound
wait
asleep.
Was not in vain. The fortune cookie.
Yeah. Oh, and don't forget our Agile Online Summit, which is going to be November 2nd through the 4th. Right?
So this year, AgileOnlineSummit.com. The link will be on the show notes. But now,
so we're going to do the fortune cookie. Now, these are prepared. This one's really prepared by what I call Agile accountants. These are the people who like to talk about velocity and how you should be fully capacitized and how do we analyze every minute of every day and put, hours in our point systems and stuff like that. So the Agile accountants they send me these fortune cookies. It's wrapped in plastic, so I can't see, and then encased in a cookie. So I cannot read these until we do the show. So what I'm going to do, we're going to do two things. One, since fortune cookies always have lucky numbers, we're going to read the lucky numbers in case anybody wants to do the lottery. So we got lucky numbers today: 34, 35, 54, 23, 16, and 44. So if you win, you can share with us. We'll more than happy to take a donation from your winnings in the lottery,
absolutely.
right?
Do get in touch, and we accept donations. So the lucky numbers were said out loud. So that's just rewind if you didn't hear all of them. And next,
and I have to say, the bags of fortune cookies I get really good because they've all been different. It hasn't been a repeat in the bags, which is not like when you go to a restaurant, you get the repeat on the table. This one's a really good one. All right. Listen to yourself more often. So the idea is now, this is what it's, I'll repeat it again. And what your job is to say how this fortune cookie applies to what we said in the show. You do it, and then I'll do it, and we'll both contribute. So the fortune cookie says, listen to yourself more often. So how does what we talked about in this episode's show apply to listen to yourself more often?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because very often, and we talked about it when we talked about the happiness track in the Agile Online Summit, very often we stop listening to ourselves because there are outside voices that we consider more important and that we should serve. Like, for example, a very common word I hear from the teams I work with: oh, but the stakeholders think that. Oh, but the stakeholders asked. Oh, but the stakeholders want, which is fine. Like, we need to pay attention to that. But when we pay attention only to that and we forget what the team is going through, the difficulties, sometimes even the challenges we're facing, we don't listen to ourselves as teams and as individuals, then we end up in a place that is not very happy, potentially even a death march project, as we were talking about a minute ago. So I think that listening to ourselves more often is a mandatory ingredient for those that want to create a better work environment that is both efficient, effective, and sustainable.
Yeah, that's really good. And I'll add, why listening. So we mentioned something about stressing out. Listen to yourself more often. Part of being a happiness track and doing this, listen to yourselves as a Scrum team or whatever when you complain about things. You're saying that for a reason. The challenge is to change that. To how can you control your own destiny and listen to what yourself is saying. If you're working too long at work, listen to what your mind's telling, what's going on. Find ways to not work 60 hours, 70 hours a week, that use the retrospectives and all that to reduce that and automate some stuff. Do some things that you don't need. Give yourself some space. So you need to listen to yourself so you don't stress out. And like we said, that one guy who just left the industry because they just stressed out. They couldn't do it anymore, right? So if you feel like you're getting that way, maybe listen to our show, Happiness. When we do our happiness track, maybe we'll find some happy ways to make it better so that you can listen to yourself not being happy anymore. Because that's a sign when you're complaining about everyone else and this doesn't work and that's not, it's a sign that you're not, you got to listen to yourself when you hear it, when you start saying that. You know there's something wrong with what you're doing and where you're working, right? So absolutely.
So Greg, we're getting close to the end of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast episode. For those of you that want to hear everything else, the prep and the post, you just go to 5 a.m. Master Scrum on YouTube or LinkedIn. There's a live stream.
We're on Facebook too, so we're on.
Yeah, or Facebook too.
Yeah, we're on
so
Facebook.
You can hear the whole show there. But we're getting close to the end. So the way we end the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast episode is to thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
Yeah, and thank everyone for joining us today. So great.
All right, and now that that's over, the live continues. I have another 5 minutes or so we can talk more.
Yeah, no, we can. I can disturb Bubbles. I don't know. She's so quiet. She's out cold.
Bubbles was on the stream early on, so you have to go back to see Bubbles.
Yeah, she was back in and we did it. And did you make yourself a coffee mug?
Oh, I did. And I put a Deming quote, which we talked about.
Oh, hey, look, we talked about Deming. What about that? What's the irony about that, huh?
Yeah, a leader is a coach, not a judge.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. And I took some IC Agile courses and learned more about coaching. Because when I ran out of being a Scrum Master, I'm like, I can't teach Scrum. Done. They're tired of hearing about Scrum. What's the next step? And I did the Agile coaching. Learned more about coaching and stuff. And it was just one of those things that they expand that. And when I think a lot of managers, mid-level managers, should take like the IC Agile course and learn about coaching more and more about facilitation. They sell this stuff to Scrum Masters, and you want to do this. I'm like, you should be selling this to everyone because they all need it. They don't. And I had managers I worked with in DoD that would have 50 people working for them. I'm like, how do you manage 50? How do you coach them? How do you be a mentor? You can't mentor 50
How can you be present
people
in 50 people's lives?
Yeah, and can you imagine the yearly evaluation?
I think it was boring for both parties.
Yeah, but can you imagine doing 50 people? Like if you spent an hour, you'd literally spend 2 weeks just doing it, nothing else.
That's just to
doing
have the meetings, and then on top of that, you have all the bureaucracy that comes with it.
Yeah, paperwork and all that. So you're spending probably a month in reality doing yearly evaluations.
How efficient is that?
That's so inefficient, right? And they're not getting anything from it. They don't get your mentoring, your knowledge.
That's a whole nother show, by the way. Like these performance reviews. I mean, this show could go on for a while.
It could, yeah. No, definitely. And I know we're at the 39-minute mark, so YouTube's not going to like us. I found that YouTube, once you go certain past, they process it. It takes forever. But we'll see how that goes. Anyway, it was great talking to you today. And
lovely to see you and hear you, Greg. All the best with the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum. I'll put the link on the show notes for everybody.
It'll be interesting to see how the audio shows up. Experimenting with Zoom and StreamYard. I'll have to write StreamYard an email and say, yeah, your audio is not too great here with the Zoom connection.
That is true, but we'll fix that.
You learn as you go. If you don't try it, how are you going to know? You got to get that feedback loop, right? You try it, see what it does. Push the envelope. What's available in the inexpensive software market.
You learn and you move on.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, I want to wish you the best. Have a great afternoon. My day is just starting. Kids are off getting the bus soon.
And Bubbles is almost awake.
No, she's out.
Yeah, but cats are night animals anyway, so.
Oh, she was nuts last night. Well, I don't know. It depends. She goes through motions. She does her thing. I don't know what they're going to do when I actually go back to office full time. She's probably going to like, where are you going? Anyway. Well, definitely. You have a great day. And everyone out there, Greg. Happy Scrumming to everyone. And
happy Scrumming, everyone.
I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know. And we'll go from there. And with that, I'm going to end the broadcast.